Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this SIG webinar. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this next hour. My name is John Powell, and I am the Director of Membership Development here at SIG, and I have the pleasure of facilitating today's webinar entitled Sourcing and Procurement Technology and Innovation Outlook by our friends at Zycus. Before I proceed, I do have a couple of housekeeping and calendar items I would like to review with you. Please submit your questions throughout the presentation by typing them in the Q&A box. However, we are going to wait until the last 5, maybe 10 minutes to answer them, so we will try to get to each and every one of your questions. But rest assured, the presenters will follow up and know that the questions are in there, and they will answer them, if not during this hour, in a future through email. So we will be sharing the slides with everyone on the webinar, and we'll push them out at the conclusion of today's webinar. So first, a few things about SIG. We do have 2 global executive summits per year. These are incredible 3.5-day events with over 50 breakout sessions, multiple keynote speakers, and entertainment and endless networking opportunities, as well as executive roundtable and CPO programs. The next summit is in beautiful Amelia Island, Florida, which is where I'm talking to you from today, from March 13th through the 16th with a golf scramble the afternoon, the day before the summit. And if you've not played that course, you must get down there and play that course. It's fantastic. We do have global events in North America, EMEA, and the Asia Pacific region. Attend one of our signature events or share them with your colleagues in the cities. Please check the SIG website frequently for upcoming cities and current agenda. Got some background noise in there. If we could put ourselves on mute, please. Webinars and town hall teleconferences. SIG hosts webinars on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You are on a webinar right now. Visit our website for a complete listing of the upcoming webinars and register today. These are 1-hour sessions on current thought leadership. And don't worry if you miss one because in the SIG Resource Center you can watch a pre-recorded webinar on demand at any time. We house the last 3 years of webinars on our SIG Resource Center. Town hall teleconferences are held once a month on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These are buy-side only open mic events that bring a small group of executives together to discuss important topics. These sessions are never recorded, which allows for an extremely organic and natural exchange. Our next town hall teleconferences is scheduled for Wednesday, December 14th, entitled Robotic Process Automation, Hype or Here, facilitated by Don Tura, President and CEO of SIG. SIG's peer-to-peer resource. This is an opportunity to ask top-of-mind questions for instant responses. Those inquiries go out on Tuesday and Thursday, and you don't have to be a member of the SIG team to respond. So please help out a fellow SIG member when you see them. SIG's Resource Center, this is home to over 5,000 tools, templates, white papers, presentations, and research. SIG's Career Network. SIG's website offers a career network with postings for sourcing professionals and internship opportunities for all levels of employment. But just as a reminder, SIG is an excellent source for senior-level opportunities and contacts, so please reach out to us, and we can help facilitate those conversations. Good on that. All right, SIG Global Events. SIG Global Executive Summits are semi-annual events with 350 to 400 decision makers in attendance. The entire summit agenda will be available online soon, but rest assured we have a star-studded lineup once again and preparing their content as we speak. Global events. SIG is gaining more of a global footprint. Please take a look at some of the upcoming global events. February 1, we have a symposium in London. February 2 and 3, we've got the Challenge the Future Awards. March 2nd, we'll be in Zurich, Switzerland. SIG University is a new program at SIG. It's got an online curriculum offered to people of all levels in their sourcing careers who seek training opportunities. Each certification level consists of modules with interactive lessons and unit assessments. Each certification is valid for 5 years. The training is asynchronous, so we are currently enrolling for our next Certified Sourcing Professional class on January 30th, 2017. We also offer a self-paced option for those that just cannot commit to a hard start and stop date. We do offer an additional 25% discount for early enrollment, which does expire this week. So if you have an interest in that class, please reach out to myself or any other SIG employee, and we will get you signed up and registered for that SIG University class. So at this point, we're at the presentation point of the slide. So I am going to introduce our speakers today. Today, I have the honor of presenting Richard Waugh. He is the Vice President of Corporate Development at Zycus. Richard leads strategic initiatives in the area of new product introduction, market development, thought leadership, analyst relations, and strategic partner development programs. I also have Matthew York. He is a research and analytic professional with more than 10 years of experience working in academia, government, and industry. His primary areas of research include sourcing, contracts, procurement, and supplier risk. In his role at Ardent Partners, Matthew also serves as the editor of CPI Rising, Ardent's daily media site, and drives the firm's social media and community development operations. I also have with me Andrew Bartolini. He's a managing partner and chief resource officer. He is a globally recognized expert in sourcing, procurement, accounts payable, and supply management. At Ardent Partners, Andrew focuses his research and efforts on helping enterprises develop and execute strategies to achieve operational excellence within their procurement and finance departments. Andrew is also the publisher of CPI Rising, the first independent media site written for and about chief procurement officers and other procurement executives. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the slides over to our presenters for today. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, John. Richard Waugh here from Zycus, the sponsor for the event. So this is the word from our sponsor portion, just very briefly. Really pleased to join you and SIG, as well as Ardent Partners, both Andrew and Matt, to cover a topic near and dear to our hearts, because when we talk about sourcing and procurement technology, that's really all Zycus does. We provide a comprehensive and integrated suite of software modules that span source-to-pay processes. So just as depicted here, both on the more strategic aspects of sourcing and procurement with regards to spend analytics, sourcing, contract, and supplier management, as well as operational aspects around procure-to-pay as an example. So this is right in our wheelhouse, and really excited to share this information with you today. I want to start with the expertise that Ardent Partners brings to the table. I'd like to turn it over to Andrew to get us started.
Thank you, Richard, and hello, everyone. Good day. Just real quick before we dive into it, right? So always a pleasure to present with Zycus and with Richard, and to have an opportunity to speak to the SIG community as well. So definitely appreciate that. Very quickly, right? For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we're a research and advisory firm focused on supply management. Our analyst team has nearly 30 years of research, advisory, and benchmarking experience within the world of procurement and supply management. And our research features deep analysis of current market trends, breaking news and analysis of major technology happenings, and next generation research on sourcing analytics, contract management, P2P, the role of procurement, and services procurement. One of our sites that may be of interest to the folks listening in today is CPI Rising. This is our, independent research, news and analysis site focused on the topics that we believe matter to CPOs and those that aspire to the role. Talk a little bit about our agenda today. So I'm going to be joined very shortly by the co-author of our latest research report, Matt York, and we're going to walk you through essentially some of the key findings from this latest research report. We're going to start by looking at what's happening in the world of procurement technology today. Then I'm going to take back control and talk to you about some of the innovations that we've seen over the last couple of years in the sourcing and procurement, and we utilize the term supply management more broadly. Look at the technology innovations that are really driving significant change and present some very large opportunities for sourcing and procurement teams. Before then, looking at a little bit of an outlook into 2017, but really looking at some of the technology innovations that exist in the larger marketplace and how we believe they could eventually be brought into procurement technologies to really offer some game-changing innovations. And then going to pass it back to Richard, who you just heard, and he's going to walk you through from a Zycus perspective many of the innovations and technology solutions that they are delivering and planning to deliver, and then we're going to conclude it with some Q&A. So Before turning it over to Matt York, who is the co-author of our report, right, but, at least the Ardent Partners section of this presentation is based upon a research report that Zycus can make available to you. This is an annual study that's drawn both from the market research that we've conducted throughout the year, as well as sort of the general work we do as analysts. The report provides a technology and innovation outlook into 2017 that we believe highlights the impact of today's progressive solutions, as well as those that are emerging across all relevant procurement processes. And so, we think it's without further ado, I'm going to pass control over to Matt York, who is a rising star and an industry analyst at Ardent Partners and co-author of the report. So Matt, take it away.
All right, thanks Andrew for that wonderful introduction, and thanks John as well for your introduction. Over the last couple of decades, CPOs and their teams have transformed from the siloed back office band of purchasers that they were to the collaborative front office change agents and value drivers that they are today. The vision of leading CPOs has always been strategic and long-term, yet procurement people, processes, and technologies have lagged behind this vision. So CPOs and their teams frequently struggle to take higher ground, instead seeming to run on a treadmill of transactional processes. Earlier this year, we conducted a survey of 331 CPOs and procurement leaders, which adds some context to the evolution of procurement. Faced with myriad business pressures, CPOs and procurement leaders are focused on an array of priorities over the next 2 to 3 years. These include cutting costs and increasing savings, improving process efficiencies and effectiveness, improving staff capabilities and retention, and improving process automation levels. Technology underpins each of these priorities, and only fairly recently have CPOs had access to these solutions. That is why 37% of CPOs and procurement leaders believe that investing in new technology or improving existing solutions is a top strategy moving forward. As CPOs consider the state of supply management technology today, including how it evolves and what it will look like tomorrow, they need to consider what their goals are for automating processes and investing in solutions. A glance at this table shows that a majority of CPOs want to improve processes, want to increase efficiencies and savings, and want to improve procurement effectiveness. These are consistent with the CPO's 2 to 3 year priorities that I just mentioned. Other goals for leveraging supply management tech solutions include improving operational compliance, reducing risk, gaining greater visibility into spend, and placing more of that spend under management. In short, there are a lot of uses for technology, but as we'll see in the next slide, current adoption levels of most solutions across the source of settle spectrum remain below 50%. So when this slide was ported over into the template we see here now, there were some difficulties in getting the numbers in this chart to really pop. So luckily, our friends at Zycus are making this report available to our listeners, so you all will have a chance to review this chart a bit more in depth and more thoroughly. But for now, I'll just sort of provide some high-level insight. As you can see from the chart, the adoption of the different supply management tech solutions continues slowly, despite the visibility, knowledge capture, and efficiency benefits that successful users report. The blue represents current adoption levels of each application area. The gray represents the percentage of procurement departments that plan to start using these solutions in the next 2 to 3 years. I want to call your attention to a few solutions in particular. eSourcing and eProcurement are in place at a majority of firms, but other solutions like contract authoring, supplier information management, and business networks are much less automated and much less frequently adopted. The good news, though, is that we expect to see growth in business networks and e-payments and continued interest in these newer areas over the next few years. So, the key takeaway here is that there are huge opportunities to advance performance by increasing automation that will help to drive efficiencies, increase visibility, and help procurement expand and improve its scope of influence. Unfortunately, enterprise-level visibility into savings, spend, and performance is not universally held today. Obviously, it is more difficult to manage projects and allocate resources when you are faced with poor visibility into final results and uncertainty as to overall enterprise objectives. Here's an example. A lack of visibility has the potential to create a gap between procurement's perception of its impact and the reality. Look at the different levels of visibility between the 75% identified savings, which is savings identified at the award of a bid, and the 58% of booked savings, which is savings captured by finance in the budget and in the general ledger, and finally to 48% implemented savings, which is the savings benefit captured by the business. So we went from 75% identified savings all the way down to 48% implemented savings. That is a huge savings gap. The key takeaway here is that visibility into spend, savings, and operations is the foundation for best-in-class procurement performance. And yet, there are many CPOs and procurement teams that lack this kind of visibility. It is our position here at Ardent Partners that chief procurement officers and other procurement leaders who attempt to manage their operations blindly and without spend analysis are guilty of procurement malpractice. They cannot reasonably state that they are managing a strategic business process if they lack visibility. Speaking of having a strategic business process in place, in 2006, only 1 out of every 3 CPOs surveyed was running their department without a formal plan in place. But in 2016, almost every CPO has an annual or multi-year plan. Fortunately, 2 out of every 3 CPOs in 2016 lack tight alignment between what they are working on and the overall objectives of the business. So here's a question for the audience, and you don't have to answer me right now, but why do you think that is? I'll let you chew on that one for a bit. The bottom line is that if it's not important to the CEO or the executives in the enterprise, then procurement shouldn't prioritize it. Procurement still has a lot of work to do to ensure that it increases its relevance and influence. This is a huge opportunity now and for 2017. Speaking of opportunity in 2017, let's talk tech adoption. Now, looking at this chart, it's clear that best-in-class procurement teams have prioritized tech adoption compared to all others. They use tech more frequently and more adeptly to achieve their advantage, which, as we can see at the bottom, translates into millions of dollars in extra savings. But let's take a step back and look at each of these applications. So regarding automated spend analysis, the best-in-class are 1.4 times more likely to utilize the solution than all others. And they are 56% more likely to deploy eSourcing solutions than all others. That's huge. The best-in-class also use contract repositories and contract authoring tools to a greater degree, 36% and 58% more, respectively. As a result, they report significantly lower maverick spend figures and are more than twice as likely to run compliance audits to stem savings leakage. The best-in-class also adopt eProcurement 36% more frequently than all others, and adoption rates are second only to eSourcing. Next up, Supplier Management. The best-in-class adoption rates of these solutions, which are 83% higher for Supplier Information Management and 156% higher for Supplier Performance Management, has helped them achieve their head start over the competition. And they use business networks 26% more frequently than all others. In fact, 77% of best-in-class users of business networks state that their supplier communications have improved, while 69% state that their supplier collaboration has improved. Suffice it to say that when it comes to technology, the best-in-class use their supply management solutions as a centerpiece to their strategy and as an overall backbone of their operations. technology helps explain the competitive advantage held by the best-in-class procurement teams. And with that, I'll pass it back off to Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I'll keep it here for a second, right, because, you know, one of the points, right, so I want to call your attention certainly to sort of the entirety of this chart, right? So the blue represents best-in-class organizations, and in Ardent's perspective, that's the top 20% of procurement organizations. And this is based on a study of more than 350 global procurement leaders in 2016. And so the advantage there, right, or the adoption rates by the best-in-class, as Matt just walked you through, significantly higher. Now, as also part and parcel of our research, right, we analyze performance benchmarks and operational benchmarks, and what we determined this year is that the best in class, you know, based in part upon their technology usage, based in part upon their expanded capabilities when compared to the other 80% of the market, based in part upon their operations and their sophistication, their engagement with the larger organization, for every $1 billion in total spend, the best-in-class manages more of that, but they also drive significantly more savings. And we've actually calculated out an extra $31.2 million in savings a best-in-class organization would deliver on $1 billion in spend. And so, you know, I mean, that's a remarkable finding. It's a significant number, and if anything, it's a justification for those of you that are looking to build your business case to transform your sourcing organizations or the larger procurement teams in general. You know, I mean, it really does show, right, the best-in-class are, you know, significantly ahead of the rest of the organization, and they really do paint you know, a picture of the direction, or you know, really have really, you know, shined a light on the path towards operational excellence within sourcing and procurement. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to you know, pivot from this and this great introduction by Matt to talk a little bit more about the innovations that we're seeing in the marketplace that are, you know, really enabling improved and enhanced performance today, right? So these are the primary drivers of you know, sort of, I just come back to the word innovation, you know, within sourcing and procurement, right? And you know, this is something that we've been tracking over years, right? I've worked in this industry for 17 years, and one of the things that certainly has changed over the last couple of years, and we see it here in this chart, is that, you know, cloud has arrived, has more than arrived, it's here to stay. What I'm showing you on this chart is the percentage of procurement organizations that have adopted these strategies within the past 2 years. And really what these are top trends when we sort of stop and think about, you know, the evolution of the technology landscape in general, but really the buying inclinations and the desires of sourcing and procurement teams, you know, more recently, right? And so, you know, if we were to go back 10 years ago when I was doing this type of research, you know, procurement organizations were fairly agnostic to the deployment method, right, of how they were receiving their solutions. They were more focused on, you know, essentially what they already had in place, and were tended to be pleased with that. But there's been a huge drive forward, and I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about the impact and implications of cloud technologies. But now, over the past couple of years, a majority of procurement organizations have adopted a cloud-based solution. The other sort of larger or macro trend has been the move away from standalone solutions towards suites, and we see this in both the P2P or downstream side. We see this in the upstream, you know, probably most relevant to a SIG audience, you know, where organizations are no longer just adopting a single module. They're starting to think more holistically about their processes. They're starting to think more holistically about their technology architectures, and they are moving forward, you know, whether it's, you know, even if it's one module or one application at a time, but the trend has been to align themselves with a single provider. And even in a more macro picture, if you were to look at the entirety of the source to settle process, organizations are leaning towards suite providers there as well. And you know, this is based on the market research we've done over years. This is based on the inquiries and the work we do on solution selection too. So an interesting trend and perspective, and one that has shifted significantly over the past 3 or 4 years. You know, so now I'm going to talk about some of the technologies that are really starting to make a difference in in the daily lives of the sourcing and procurement professionals, and really changing the way that organizations utilize their technology, right? So just talked about cloud, and with a majority of sourcing and procurement teams adopting and utilizing a cloud solution, a new cloud solution over the past 2 years. Don't need to spend too much time here, but cloud really has changed the way that organizations can access technology, and in many ways this has been a transformation that's happened over the past decade that has been led in many cases by IT, who finally have sort of welcomed with open arms the shift away from the long implementations that are required for behind-the-firewall technologies. Cloud offers many benefits. One is speed to value. There's significantly faster times to deployment. The investments that are made are lower initially, and at some level, or I should say, or in most cases, it has enabled greater control to the business process owner, right? So procurement and sourcing teams no longer need to, gain and acquire resources internally from an IT perspective and general support perspective, right? The support and the maintenance and the uptime, has essentially been outsourced to the cloud provider, and this has really opened up avenues for them to become more aggressive, right? Now cloud also has other benefits simply beyond speed to value and sort of the management of the solutions. In a cloud-based environment, it's much easier for solution providers to update and upgrade their solutions, and it's very commonplace for cloud providers to update their solutions, the applications several times each year, bringing new innovations in a more seamless way. I would say that another factor, right? Another key factor that we've seen over the past couple of years is the impact that social and consumer tools have had on the enterprise technology market. It's not necessarily that those exact capabilities are being built into your sourcing and eProcurement applications directly, but really what has happened is that there's been a pivot away from sort of the very deep feature functionality arms war that providers used to get into, and really there's been a much greater awareness, and Zycus has certainly been at the forefront of this. There's been a greater awareness that the technology only delivers value if people use them, and people are more inclined to use the solutions if they are in fact easier to use. And so we've talked for years about making the buying solutions as easy as those that you use at home, and so there's been this major focus on usability, and it's really started to transform the industry, and it has really changed the direction of the product roadmap for many of the companies that we work with. And we'll sort of continue here now to look at a couple other enabling technologies, right? We live in a connected world, and business networks and the connectivity between buyer and supplier is enabled by networks or platforms that enable a many-to-many connectivity. Is helping to speed the time to value and enable better returns and greater spend under management and greater compliance as well. Another key technology, and one that really shouldn't be understated, right? It's so before becoming an analyst, I worked on the technology side and led large supply management suite implementations for a couple of years, and the back end integrations were problematic. They're still not necessarily the easiest part of a technology deployment, but they've become significantly easier with pre-built integrations that the different solution providers have. A lot of the back-end noise has been eliminated, and really is enabling organizations to adopt their solutions and really get to the functional side of the house much quicker. a couple of things that we see is really starting to, potentially, change the game, right? We're always looking for, what are the drivers, right? Matt York, shared with you the adoption levels of the different solutions that we feel really drive a that really can and should drive a procurement operation, right? They're not universally adopted today, and there's still work to be done. And these things happen over a longer arc than many of us expected when we were getting started in this industry in the late 90s. But when I look at mobile and its opportunity to start to change those adoption levels and to put procurement on, a new or higher arc, we think that there's extraordinary opportunities, in the near future, right? For by and large, most global enterprises have not moved away from the traditional laptop or desktop hardware that their employees use, and they have not yet moved to a tablet. But we believe that once to smart tablets and smart devices, and we believe that once that migration really starts to happen, and organizations are beginning to utilize mobile apps as opposed to the solutions they're using today, there's going to be a shift in adoption, right? When you utilize technology on an app, right, it has to be brutally simplified. And that really, we believe, was going to be one of the key drivers in driving greater adoption as we move forward. And it's one of the reasons why, mobile, when you're looking at your RFPs, should be a consideration, not a primary consideration and not something that drives you away from your best fit solution, but certainly something that you want to understand as you're making your technology selections. What are the current mobile capabilities today, and what does the roadmap look like? And then clearly, if you read any of the technology pages, right, if you read any of the research from our peers, big data really has, sort of captured the attention of business as a whole, and just sort of leave with a point, and we'll come back with a couple examples as we go forward, but, it's been stated that 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years, and that's an extraordinary stat, and believe it feels true, even if it's maybe not exactly 90%, but the concept here is, right, data from our perspective is a lot like oil in the ground, right? There's a lot of value in that oil. There's a lot of value in that data that resides in those systems. But some work needs to be done to get it to the user who's going to actually turn that data into value, right? So like oil, right? You've got to pull the data out of the systems. It needs to be refined, and then it needs to be delivered to the people that can take action on it. It has no value simply residing in systems today. But there's a lot of interesting things that we see on the cusp, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about in this next section here. All right, the future of procurement technology. And this section really looks at technologies that exist in the marketplace today, but haven't necessarily been brought into procurement technologies as yet. And we think that when that convergence really happens, a lot of exciting things are going to start to happen. And right, so it starts with spend analytics for future sourcing events, right? So our research has shown that those organizations that directly link their spend analysis data to their eSourcing events save anywhere from, I think it's about 35 to 60% more on an eSourcing project, right? So a lot of value there, very clear results, very clear justification in getting visibility into your spend and automating your sourcing processes. But we start to think, how much more automated could that connection be, right? And start to think of scenarios and examples out in the future where your sourcing pipelines are actually driven by the parameters that you set within your spend analysis solution, right? You may be focused this quarter on savings, or you may be focused this quarter on rationalizing suppliers, you may be focused this quarter on expanding into new markets and then increasing the spend in those areas or pivoting away from a potential risk area. And by setting those parameters at the start of the process, the sourcing pipeline and the activity of your sourcing team is actually changed in real time, right? So as you move forward down a quarter, say your company misses a quarter, misses its earnings numbers, and has to pivot suddenly to increase the level of savings by tweaking and fine-tuning the controls at the beginning of the process. The sourcing pipeline changes in real time, and so this is happening in very advanced sourcing and procurement organizations. As I struggle here to say basic words, but it's happening in a somewhat of a fragmented way. But we think that like this type of innovation and technology is not that far out in the future, right? We're trying to accomplish these things, right? Matt York showed you the disconnect between what sourcing and procurement teams are working on and the actual focus of the CEO and the executives of the organization, right? We think technology, can really solve bridge a lot of those gaps that exist today, and we look at an example like this, right, and other, I guess, almost case studies of what if and what we see in the future as we go forward here, right? So Moneyball for procurement, right? So at our CPI Rising event earlier this year, we had a fantastic presenter who worked at a global conglomerate, was talking about how they were beginning to utilize the data from their large volume of sourcing events, right? So they source somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 events each year, and they were beginning to apply data science to the operational metrics that were captured as a result of that high volume of activity. Now Moneyball, many of you may remember, was an Oscar-nominated movie. It's an even better book that was written by Michael Lewis that really looked at the sport of baseball and how one team, the Oakland A's, started to analyze metrics, performance metrics of all different players to begin to better predict the outcomes or the performance of players in the future, right? So they're no longer looking at a prospect and saying, oh, he can run fast, he can throw the ball fast, he hits for power. They were looking at the metrics and determining what that performance was and identifying market inefficiencies. And so able to, as I slightly move that forward there, looking at market inefficiencies and taking advantage of those inefficiencies, right? We see the same types of opportunities where procurement starts to take a really truly scientific approach to what it is that they're doing. You start to look at maybe something like are there times, the right times to buy? Are there the right times to, go long from a contract duration standpoint? More specifically, the example I'll give is the example that our presenter at our event shared. They were able to make a determination that the day of the week that a sourcing event was held and the time actually had an impact on the final outcome. They were able to make a determination as to the number of suppliers or bidders that were invited to an auction actually had a direct outcome. And it's taking things that many organizations know by feel and execute in an ad hoc way and really formalizing them and really doing it in such a way that there's much greater precision and impact. Now, I already showed you the previous slides. Let's go back to, or the next slide. Let's go back to that and look at contracts and analytics and look at data analysis from both a structured and an unstructured standpoint, right? We believe that we're not too far away from a point in time where sourcing teams can do an analysis of their contracts and based upon that analysis understand the execution, the negotiation and execution cycle times, right? You may be able to find that, with a, sort of a regression analysis look at the content of your contracts, that there are certain clauses that are more problematic for your suppliers than others. and that may be, significantly lengthening the time of negotiation. And by beginning to, analyze both structured and unstructured data in a more scientific way, other learnings are certainly bound to arise. AI and machine learning, right? When we look at what's being done today, right? We see this in in our search, right? So if you're on Google, you're on Yahoo, you're on any of the other search engines, right? And you have gone and you've done a little shopping. The system knows to put things that you might be interested in up in front of you, right? So we think that the same opportunities exist and really when applied to the buying activity of an organization, right? You can look at an example maybe of well, let's say travel management, right? We think it would be, fantastic, and we're not too far off from your sourcing teams and your travel teams getting together and analyzing the recent travel spend to understand, where greater, really to understand travel behaviors and to understand, the travel activity to a degree that you can better model your policies in a more real-time way. You can begin to then pull in, the travel pricing information that, that organizations are starting to better understand so that you can, buy in bulk during the low periods and essentially, try to find or redirect travel in those periods of high cost. And really with AI and machine learning, what we see are that the systems are, becoming smarter based upon the specific user activity, based upon the specific spend activity. And I think this stuff is, really exciting and really on the cusp. And so, you move to predictive analytics, right? And so, today, if you were to go on Wall Street, right, there are, billions and billions in trades made that are executed based upon algorithms that have been built that incorporate, based upon algorithms that have, complex data models that include third-party information and, recent activity. We think that procurement organizations are going to be able to utilize the same types of technologies as it relates to their own spend. Doesn't mean that you're buying your MRO and your office supplies and, buying, bits and pieces day by day, but really looking at it over the arc of a quarter or over the arc of a year and making, investment and buy decisions and sourcing decisions based upon the outputs or based upon the analysis of a large ream of data. And so, those are just sort of higher level examples, but directionally where the industry is heading and where we see those technologies, making an impact in other segments. So where does that leave us, right? So, Matt York talked a little bit about sourcing and procurement technology today, and that's the now column here, right? We've moved over the past decade away from installed and towards cloud, right? The models are different. How companies pay for them, the big trends of cloud, the big trend of investments in suites as opposed to one-off or standalone solutions, usability playing a big role, and big data, continues to rise in its importance, right? And as we start to deal with more organizations through their RFP process, whether we're taking inquiries or working side by side with them, right, there's definitely also been the shift away from sort of the, focus on feature functionality and really an understanding of, what are going to be the most usable, what are going to drive the highest volume, what are going to be the solutions that really drive the greatest impact on our organization. And that's been a pretty significant trend in an arc that we've seen over the past couple of years. And so, where does that leave us, right? Supply markets continue to expand, shift, merge, and emerge at a pace that's really never been seen before, right? How procurement organizations communicate, collaborate, and transact with their internal stakeholders and their external trading partners, and the enabling technologies and platforms that they utilize will take on increasing importance to overall business operations and bottom line results. Right? The CPO's technology strategy is more important than ever, and it should be both well-constructed and given the level of innovation in the market, also regularly reviewed and refined, right? You know, we're on the cusp of a new fount of innovation. You know, a couple of years ago, it was quite in vogue. Many of the CPOs that we worked with and interviewed talked about the relationship with finance and the need to speak their language, and many of them essentially created the role of a procurement CFO. And that was highly effective. And the CPO and the CFO now get along better than they ever have, and it's actually a strong partnership, one that was a difficult one a decade ago. The speed of innovation in this market has really changed, and we think that CPOs really do need to have someone who's dedicated to understanding the markets, you know, not just managing the technologies that you have today, but keeping abreast of what's happening in the market today so that you can begin to pull those key innovations in. And finally, right, we spend a lot of time talking about technology, but as this VP of Procurement, essentially their CPO, you know, told me last month actually, you know, they're focused on technology. You know, it's absolutely critical that they, you know, become a center of excellence, but it's also the people, the process, and the technology combined together that really drives the value. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Richard here and let him take us home. Richard?
Well, thanks so much, Andrew, and Matt as well. Really appreciate it. Really giving us a good sense of not only where is the state of the technology market in sourcing and procurement today, but also where it's going in the future here. And to kind of conclude our session today, I just wanted to share a few, let's call them scenarios, but hopefully practical examples of how some of these latest technology innovations are being applied to real-world use cases. And just starting out, you've already set the stage, Andrew and Matt, talking about the clear trend in the market towards an integrated suite that connects the dots across source to pay. I'm not going to take you through all these dots, but, you know, looking at how do we get value and synergy from a suite beyond some of the more obvious benefits that include like having a common look and feel, easier integration not only within the suite, but also to back-end ERP systems. But let's talk about some of the use cases where you find process synergies across source to pay. And I'll just point out a couple of those, really starting with spend analytics, that a user, let's say it's a day in the life of a category manager, they fire up their dashboard, they can see savings opportunities and automatically initiate a sourcing event. And having that linkage, Andrew, as I think you already referenced from your benchmark data, 35 to 60% more savings from a sourcing event when you infuse it with that intelligence from the spend data. And then the integration to your supplier database means I can find quickly the qualified suppliers, maybe even look at their current performance scorecard when I'm determining which ones to select and invite to an RFP event. At the conclusion of that event, I want to automatically populate my contract with the negotiated terms and pricing, et cetera, and also then make that contract more operational in that it automatically populates catalogs for eProcurement or the information to generate purchase orders, that you're capturing supplier information around banking and their technology credentials like XML to establish eInvoicing or ACH and EFT payment connections. Also taking that data from the contracts, the service level agreements and those kinds of things, along with spend data to populate and update key performance indicators in the supplier scorecarding process. So just a few examples of how to connect these dots, how to get increased leverage across source to pay. Spend analytics, and not your father's spend analytics in this case. Historically, spend analytics have been pretty much reactive, you know, after the fact views of historical spend data, also almost exclusively internally focused, and often so difficult to use that they were the purview of a relatively few sort of technically oriented analyst types. So what's coming? What are the innovations here that are changing spend analytics? First are tools like spend mining to make spend analysis more prescriptive, meaning have the system have the intelligence to suggest to the user what savings opportunities may be in the areas like supplier or payment term rationalization. Or with spend monitoring, make it more proactive. So instead of sitting back and at the month close or quarter close when you have a spend refresh, looking at that information, have the system push to me alerts and reminders that look at movements in the spend data. So being able to set alerts based on, for instance, increases or decreases in spend volume. And the use cases here include things like supplier transitions. I'm moving out a supplier for a new one. I want to track how quickly that spend is diverted to the new supplier, or something as simple, for instance, as tracking volume rebates and having the system give me those proactive alerts and reminders. Another example of how innovation is driving the spend analytics space is making it more predictive, really enhancing internal spend analysis with external spend and commodity price information from commodity market indices, for example, to build that into my cost models and be able to project what are the movements in underlying commodity or feedstock prices that impact my overall cost profile in a more predictive way. And finally, making it truly more participative, so more egalitarian. Anybody could use spend data if they could have access to quick search tools. So, for example, be able to look up very quickly on an item basis what was the last price paid, who was the supplier, and be able to really get that data in the hands of end users who are on the front lines, not just the data analysts. So some examples there of how spend analytics are innovating, changing the face of sourcing and procurement. Some of the technology we've talked about, artificial intelligence and its close cousins, cognitive computing and machine learning, and that sounds somewhat threatening in some respects, that the machine is going to do the thinking for me or maybe replace me. And oh, by the way, if it's machine learning, they're progressively getting smarter and smarter all the time. But I think in reality, AI holds the potential to make our lives easier, make our jobs easier. So take an example, for instance, of applying artificial intelligence to the P2P process to improve the user experience overall. And we've all had experience with search, which really when a user logs into Procure to Pay, that's the initial moment of truth. Can I find the product or service that I'm looking for? Because if I can, I may not be coming back. And the downfall with traditional keyword search has been that I may get many more search results or hits than are really relevant to what I'm trying to find. So an example here is if my search term based on the way I think about a product happened to be a blade, I may be just as likely to get a cutting tool as a server, as a medical instrument, a scalpel, or maybe even roller blades. So AI can really help by narrowing that down, understanding and predicting my buying patterns so that it presents to me the relevant category search so that my search results are only those that I'm interested in, and can drive downstream processes so I can map that category code to a category-specific approval workflow, or from the category to the correct GL coding as an example. So it really shouldn't be threatening, has the potential to make our lives much easier. Another search example here where natural language processing plays, so NLP. And we've all had the experience of when we try to find an answer to a problem, we were either had to resort to a database query that meant getting IT support, which is in short supply, or going through a kind of a laborious reporting interface to select amongst multiple filters and parameters and schedule a report and wait for the answer to come back. So in this case, if I'm in search of an answer, NLP, natural language processing, may be the answer, so that I could ask in a natural language term a question like, how many PCs did we buy from Dell this month? And have that answer come back to me instantaneously and mask the complexity on the back end to be able to do that search. And just the way Siri might for a consumer, think of it as Siri for procurement. We've also talked about cloud computing extensively, and cloud solutions, of course, enable faster deployment, lower upfront investment, better ROI, but historically, the trade-off that's been perceived is that I give up the ability to customize the solution. And of course, in a multi-tenant environment, that's true to a large extent, but cloud solutions have become much more advanced in the area of configuration. And it really means a lot more than just being able to host multiple clients on a single server. It means multi-entity configurations within a single instance. So that means whether it's within your own organization and different business units, or maybe it's franchisees, so actually separate business partners, being able to, in a single instance, accommodate the different nuances of specific entity-specific workflows, processes, language, currencies, and et cetera. So I want to conclude by talking about how social networking tools really are starting to make their way into the enterprise source-to-pay environment. We'll talk about some common analogs here. Facebook is a great example here of where individuals, and in fact many corporations as well, have been very prolific in being able to maintain personal profiles on a Facebook site. So why couldn't this be enabled from a self-service portal for suppliers to keep all of that information up to date on your behalf? And as well, they include third parties that can rate and rank the content, just like a user might like my Facebook page. Here you can have ratings and rankings incorporated. And the genius of Facebook, too, is that they can get users to come back frequently to check their status. So think about the application and source-to-pay. Suppliers in particular always want to know, do you have a new PO for me? Do you have an RFQ? And probably even more frequently, what's the status of my invoice and payment? Getting them to do that on a self-service basis instead of calling you to find out when the check's going to arrive is really a huge productivity benefit. Another example, Instagram. So in the consumer world, there's been this explosion of digital content from photo sharing apps like an Instagram, and anybody with a smartphone can upload a picture of what they're having for dinner, so they can share or maybe overshare in some cases. But think about the application here where especially small suppliers that may not have e-commerce tools in place, but they have a smartphone, they have a connection to the internet, they could upload an image of their invoice as an example, and with OCR in the cloud, optical character recognition, transfer that into an electronic invoice back to you. A couple other examples, YouTube. How do you capture and share institutional knowledge? Maybe it's a talking head, and I've got Andrew Yearhead here as an example, but having that information available to a user, exactly, at the point of need can really drive success. Likewise, chatbots, being able to get an answer to my question instantaneously really is going to drive adoption and effectiveness of the technology tools. And I'll just wrap here by talking about different trends that really have potential huge breakthroughs in our market, are probably subjects for an entire webinar in and of themselves. The Internet of Things, one example, being able to use connected devices to provide lights-out signals, for instance, for inventory replenishment, or RPA, robotic process automation, especially effective in dealing in high-volume, kind of repetitive tasks and distributed kind of legacy environments that have a requirement to push and pull data without expensive integrations or without having to deploy huge volumes of resources to do so. So just a quick tour of some ways in which technology is innovating the sourcing and procurement space, and will continue to do so in the future. And John, I know we're up against the time, but I wanted to turn it back to you for any questions we may deal with today or after the webinar.
Richard, well, thank you very, very much. I am going to, we are coming up against the end of the hour, and we are sticklers here at SIG for time. So I do want to, first and foremost, thank Richard, Matthew, and Andrew. That was a fantastic presentation, absolutely just jam-packed with information. We are literally sharing the file, transferring the file out to the attendees as we speak. There were quite a few questions in queue that, understandably, we didn't get a chance to get to. If you could please, if you have a question that did not get answered, please ask the presenters directly. Andrew, Richard, or Matthew are all very attentive, and we'll get to your question because it did not have time to get answered to. So with that, I do want to conclude today's webinar. I do want to mention that our next webinar is on Tuesday, December 13th, and it's at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is by Pro Unlimited. So once again, thank you for your time today. We do appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you in the next webinar on Tuesday. And Richard, Matthew, and Andrew, thanks again. That was fantastic. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.